welcome to another video reaction. Today we are checking out a video from Toast. I don't think I haven't reacted to a referee on FNAF at all. I'm not for a while now. This is did Scott Coffin directly confirm lore? I think this is to do with the 5 Laps at Freddy's. So let's check it out.
There are countless debates in Five Nights at Freddy's, and many of them are genuinely unanswerable. Things like what's inside the box, because apparently even Scott doesn't know, or what this funky little guy in FNAF world is. But one debate rings true amongst the entire fandom as truly a head-scratcher, and that is, what does the secret minigame in Midnight Motorist actually tell us? I have my take on it. I made a full video on it not 9 months ago. But something major dropped a few weeks ago that gives us nearly a confirmation on one of the main aspects of this minigame. So we need to talk about it. Slices, put on your aprons, and let's bake ourselves a theory. So what is Midnight Motorist? Well, technically just this purchasable minigame within FNAF 6, or Freddy Fazbear Pizzeria Simulator. It's one of the many arcade games you can buy and test to earn tokens in the pizzeria. But when you play this game, right before it ends, there's this missing section of wall on the bottom of the screen. And if you go through it, you actually gain access to a separate minigame in the files labeled as Later That Night, leading many to speculate that this secret lore minigame takes place after the security minigame, in which Charlotte Emily gets killed and left outside of a Freddy's. Note the similar raindrops and tire tracks. Whether or not that's true, Later That Night sees us driving a purple car through a wooded road and visiting various stops. The first one we can visit is this clearing in the woods with a strange lump in it. Then we can go to this building called Junior's. If we try to enter, this green man tells us, quote, "Come on, you know you can't be here. Don't make this more difficult than it has to be." You then leave. Notably, this is the first time we see our character, and he's this yellowish-orange color, many calling him Mustard Man. Finally, if we keep going down the road until the music stops, eventually we find a driveway, park, and enter a house. Inside, we see someone sitting on a couch watching TV, and as we pass them, we hear them say, quote, "Leave him alone tonight, he had a rough day." If we go further in, we find a closed, locked door that our character knocks on and says, "I told you not to close your door." If we try to leave, we say, "This is my house, he can't ignore me like that," and then bang on the door, eventually shouting, "Open the door." Then we remark that we'll find a way in from outside. If you then exit and go around the house back into the rain, you'll find a broken window, footprints leading off into the woods, and one pair of animatronic footprints. Our character remarks, "He's ran off to that place again, he'll be sorry when he gets back." And the minigame ends. In case you somehow missed it, I'm making Toast an official mascot for this channel. They look like this, they're a crazy little sociopath, and I love them dearly. And to celebrate that, I'm working with Makeshift to hopefully make Toast an Thank you very much. Now you can see why this minigame is so hotly debated. Like, it's very important and is trying to tell us a specific thing, but all of the details are so vague that it's really up to interpretation as to what it's telling us. So, what is it trying to tell us?
I don't know.
There's many interpretations with
that minigame has always been like a mystery for me as well.
Of a missing child incident victim. We're playing as some random father. The person on the couch is some random other family member, and the runaway is one of the missing child incident victims. It's showing us this story of this neglectful and abusive family right after William Afton kidnaps a child. This then goes along with the file name Later That Night. Later that night of the missing child incident, one of the families recognizes that their child is gone. It's an interesting theory, and there's some decent evidence to back it up. For one, a lot of the details of this family of the minigame don't line up with any other families we have any information on. So it might be a family we don't know yet. Furthermore, Fruity Maze, another secret lore minigame in FNAF 6, features another missing child incident victim, Susie. So if this minigame is about a missing child incident victim, then why not this minigame? And possibly the strongest evidence for this theory comes from Ultimate Custom Night with Toy Chica's high school years. After all,
Toy Chica is William Afton.
And like, I get it, haha, funny clip, but Daco is right here. Like, this is Toy Chica describing methods to kidnap children. It's completely reasonable to assume that these are methods William Afton used to kidnap children. Especially since one of these lines up with Fruity Maze. In Fruity Maze, William Afton lures Susie to the back room by saying her dog isn't dead, he's just over here. And that lines up with this line from Toy Chica.
"I told him that someone ran over his dog in front of my house. But once he's there, I'll entice him with warm cookies, lure him inside, invite him inside, and then I'll have him."
So,
I mean, that was kind of obvious.
Well, you remember how the window was... Well, you remember how the window was broken and there's footprints leading away? Listen to how Toichika says she'll get this one.
I told him to come over later. That should be enough. And if he doesn't show up, I'll just go to his house. And if he doesn't open the door, I'll just find a window.
So, with all this evidence and this logic and reasoning, is this...
I actually don't remember that. Yo, that's actually a good find. Shit, I actually don't remember that.
Scene depicting the kidnapping of one of the missing child incident victims. Personally, I don't think so. After all, there are multiple problems with this theory that make me too hesitant to believe in it. For one, we literally know nothing about the people in this minigame, so I always hesitate when a theory takes a question we have no answers to, and an answer we have no questions to, and just links it up because technically none of the information here is conflicting. It's only not conflicting because we have no information, so that's loose evidence at best. It's like the CEO of Fazbear being Mrs. Afton all over again. Sure, technically we have a loose thread here and a place to connect it, but we don't know anything about either of these pieces, so they only connect because of what we don't know about them. The Fruity Maze evidence seems good on the surface, but note that I said the security puppet minigame has Charlotte Emily dying, who as far as we're aware of is not part of the missing child incident. So there really isn't a pattern here. If anything, it's a pattern of characters at the FNAF 6 location. We do have Charlotte Emily as the puppet in Lefty, and if you believe that the missing child incident victims end up in Molten Freddy, then we have Susie and Fruity Maze for Molten Freddy. So then which animatronic is this minigame referring to? Scrap Baby? Probably not. William Afton as Scrap Trap?
No.
But most notably to go against this theory, in my opinion, are the animatronic footprints. If these are supposed to be explained by William Afton using the Spring Bonnie suit to lure the child out and kidnap them, something doesn't add up here. If this happened recently, and I assume it did because the mother thinks that they're still at home, then William Afton would have had to have worn a Springlock suit in the rain. And we know that Springlock suits can be triggered by moisture. So wearing one in the middle of rain this heavy seems like
it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Something that William would not have survived. So these footprints I don't think can be explained by someone wearing a Springlock suit. Furthermore, we have no direct evidence stating that William Afton kidnapped children outside of a Freddy's location. As far as we're aware, the only child killings he ever did were inside or directly outside of a Freddy Fazbear's. Or like a Fredbear's, or, you know, a Fazbear building, essentially. We have no evidence that he ever went to a child's home and kidnapped them from their own bedroom. So it is a good theory, but I personally have too many problems with it to believe it. Another theory that got floated around the community, especially more recently, is that this is telling us the story of Rory from Didophobia. For anyone who didn't read that Tales from the Pizzaplex story, essentially a child named Rory ran away from home, was kidnapped by William Afton, and is experimented on for the rest of his life. Essentially, he's put into an automatic testing chamber that recreates the FNAF 4 nightmares on an endless loop. The entire area is filled with a hallucinogenic gas that makes things seem much more lifelike and terrifying. It was supposed to study the effects on constant fear on the human brain. In that story, we learn that Rory ran away from home because he felt like an outcast, and that was when William Afton kidnapped him and threw him into the testing chambers. So, that lines up pretty well, right? After all, this is one of the only canonical runaway children we know in the franchise, linking it up with a kid who runs away from home.
That kind of makes sense, I guess.
Sense on the surface. But there's one major issue I find that makes this not really add up. And that is that the Midnight Motorist family seems
I can see the connection, but
the dad is banging on doors, screaming to let him in, and is willing to go into the window just to see his son. Not to mention, he got kicked out of what I believe is a bar, which tells me he's probably drunk, especially if the Midnight Motorist driving is anything to go off of. So this drunk, abusive father comes home screaming as his kid, and the father is just detached, blankly staring at the TV. This is a dysfunctional household with an abusive family system. So what do we know about Rory's family? Admittedly, not that much. What we do know is that they seem like alright parents. Rory felt like an outcast, but it didn't seem like this was something purposefully done by his parents. You might be able to make a case that they were a bit neglectful or didn't pay enough attention to him, but they seem like genuinely nice parents, and much better than the ones in Midnight Motorist. If this was an abusive household, I'm sure William would have brought that
I
up
didn't
to
read that
continue
story,
to
so I don't know
manipulate
much
Rory
about
to
this
stay,
one.
but he doesn't, because I don't think they were. So these families are so different that it doesn't really make sense, and different in a way that isn't necessary. I understand that sometimes changes need to be made as the story continues to stick to a current story that makes more sense in the present tense. However, this detail would have realistically not affected anything within.
It has to be something related
to the fact that this detail that wouldn't have changed the major story.
I don't think it's the Afton. I don't know if it's the Afton household.
The games. I think that's on purpose. So if it isn't Rory, and if it isn't a random missing child incident victim, what's another theory in the community about this minigame? Well, a very common one I've heard is that the Mustard Man is William Afton. Michael Afton is the one sitting on the couch, and the crying child.
No, I don't believe that.
On the surface, the logic here I think is pretty solid. After all, William
I don't think it is
historically depicted in purple.
I don't think it is
the color of his car, but I hear you hesitating. This guy is not purple; he's more of a yellow color. Well, in the very same game, William Afton is associated with the color yellow when wearing the Spring Bonnie suit.
I don't think it
in
is
yellow font. Personally, I see this as an intentional showing of the two sides of William Afton: the happy one he presents to the real world, and the darker inside he only presents to his victims. A perfect example.
I guess that's an interesting detail,
months ago, but I'm just going to pull it up right here.
That is an interesting detail.
Steve Raglan from the FNAF movie. Something that I think was really smart is that Steve Raglan, aka actually William Afton, when we first meet him, is wearing a yellow suit with a purple tie. His calm, nice outer shell hiding his twisted insides. I think that is a perfect characterization of William Afton. And I think we're seeing that in Midnight Motorist. The yellow is his exterior self.
I guess I can see that. I can see
Michael,
it.
I mean, look at Sister Location. Every night except the one we get kidnapped in ends with Michael sitting on a couch and watching TV. It seems like it's something he likes to do. So if we see him in the very next game sitting on a couch and watching TV, it makes a lot of sense. But for me, I could understand that when we get to the crying child, because this runaway seemingly broke through a window and ran away in the middle of the night, and I just don't see the crying child doing that. We only get one game of characterization for the crying child, and in that entire game, the crying child is solely a sobbing mess who cannot do anything but crumple into a ball and cry. So why would he break through a window and...
That actually doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. If the mustard dude is William Afton, and Mike's the guy on the chair, I wonder if this is the... Because we know there's Elizabeth Afton, the daughter, that becomes baby. So maybe this was like the pretense when Elizabeth died baby. Man, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense either. I don't know. All I can think is that maybe that's my scenario, is that because he did technically witness his sister dying, or what you've seen. I don't know. Maybe there's a connection. I don't know.
Range of emotional pace
for this character,
let alone because of an animatronic. After all, he seems terrified of animatronics.
He's terrified of it. He's terrified of animatronics, so that doesn't make sense.
What animatronic would have been outside his window? It just doesn't quite make sense. But I will say, of the common theories in the fandom that are not the one that I currently believe, this is probably the one I believe second most.
Yeah.
And that's because it is very close to the one I believe. The theory I believe for Midnight Motorist is that William Afton is the Mustard Man, but the person on the couch is Mrs. Afton, and Michael is the runaway child. In the theory I made 9 months ago, I state that this is a moment after the crying child has died, later in the night that William Afton killed Charlotte Emily. So all the details around this game have changed since I made that video after working on a timeline this year. The most up-to-date version of what I believe about this minigame is that William Afton goes to kill Charlotte Emily to try to convince Henry to help him in his plan to bring back the crying child by experimenting with the Sister Location animatronics. That was a whole mouthful. mouthful. I get it. I probably went way too
What?
fast. Essentially, boil it down to the important bits. William Afton kills Charlotte Emily in the security puppet minigame and then drives home. And when he gets home, all that's there to greet him is Mrs. Afton and Michael Afton, Elizabeth being in another room. Michael Afton had been running away from the house a lot to visit his childhood favorite lake and his brother's unmarked grave just a bit away in the woods.
Okay.
William Afton, though, had had enough of it, and he even planted a spare animatronic outside his window to try to keep him in place. But when he gets home tonight, he finds that Michael
that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense either.
And in fact, broke out of his windows past the animatronic he placed there just to sneak off. So this minigame is showing us that, and that this was the final straw. He'll be sorry when he gets back, because when Michael gets back, William Afton throws him in the FNAF 4 testing chambers that we see in-game in Sister Location. So, again, the context around the minigame, but my basic theory for what Midnight Motorist has been telling us is that William Afton is the mustard man, Mrs. Afton is on the couch because she's still there, but she's leaving soon, and Michael Afton is the runaway. But I hear you, 9 months is not a long enough time to make another...
I don't know. It doesn't, and I can see where he's coming from. I just don't see it. I don't see it, to be honest. I don't see it. I just don't. I mean, to be fair, it is a good theory, but I just don't physically see it. I just don't physically see it at all.
Another video on the same theory like this. I typically wouldn't make another version of a theory this soon unless I've changed my mind or something really important happened.
Okay.
So what happened? What mind-shattering, lore-exploding FNAF game could have possibly come out that have repercussions for the entire FNAF timeline?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not kidding. I'm exaggerating for a bit, but I'm 100% serious.
Well,
So if you guys somehow missed it during the FNAF Anniversary week, one of the weirder, but one of my favorite releases we got was a demo for 5 Laps at Freddy's, an Unreal Engine kart racer all about Five Nights at Freddy's made by the team over at Click Team. It's very silly, it's very fun. The demo is filled with bugs, but they're working to fix it, and the base game itself is
buggy as
really
fuck.
fun. I will say, Click Team, this is the biggest platform I've ever talked about this game. If you are somehow watching this, I need this message to get to you. Besides adding online multiplayer, which is a necessity if you want this game to be a success, please do 3 things and you will have a very fun, good kart racer on your hands. 1, right now, if you're drifting into a turn and you drift too hard, you'll go 180 degrees and go backwards. That feels weird and bad. You should only be able to go 180 degrees if you're holding the e-brake button or like the reverse button. If you're just drifting, you should not be able to do that. That feels weird. Change that parameter. 2, when you're going vertical, it shouldn't hurt your momentum. Right now, going up hills slows you down a bit, especially in the sinkhole, and that's probably just a physics thing, but it happens on jumps too. Hitting a big jump and then landing kills your speed and momentum, which feels really bad. A good example of this, again in the sinkhole, is when you're leaving the salon section into that wide open track. That's a huge jump where you should be boosting, and then you lose all of that speed you just gained. It feels really bad. Find a way to keep your momentum after a jump. And 3rd, off-roading is way too punishing right now. You have a timer, which makes sense, and it slows you down. Both of these on their own are fine. Even together, it's a perfectly acceptable system. However, the aggressiveness that it slows you down off-road, I think is too much. You basically go to a snail's pace and then have 2 seconds to get back onto the track. Most of the time, you can't even get there. So the moment you go off-road, you're respawned and you lose a bunch of stuff. I think this off-road system is fine, but you should slow us down less off-road. Not take away the slowdown altogether. You should still get slowed down when you go off-road, but just less than it currently is. And if you want to play tester, please, my DMs are open. Anyway, rant aside, how could this game possibly have relevant lore inside of it? Well, one of the tracks is literally called Midnight Motorist. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Like, this is the Later That Night minigame with the original Midnight Motorist sprinkled in as well, with a really cool homage that in night mode it almost looks 1-to-1 with that arcade game. Really well done stuff here. But now we can explore this minigame in a detailed and 3D environment to see anything we might have not been able to see in the original. Although to be honest, this map doesn't reveal too much. We get some nice shots of juniors, and we even get to see the lump, but admittedly, this lump is probably the only lore-relevant detail of this map, and that being, it's not just this mound that we saw in the minigame, but a large rectangular bump. In my opinion, this is a lot more grave-like, and it, in my opinion, supports my interpretation that the crime child is buried here. And actually, there's a pretty funny Easter egg that if you go out of bounds underneath the ground to try to clip into this lump to see what's in there, there's some dev text that literally says, "No secret lore here." Which is a very funny.
That's funny.
Props to y'all. That's really good. So if the Midnight Motorist map isn't the big lore reveal of this demo, what is? Well, the car named Midnight Motorer, which is literally the purple car from the Later That Night minigame, adorned with a spring body antenna topper. So, orange guy is William Afton. Confirmed. Case closed, right? Well, kinda. One of the big points of contention surrounding this game is if we can even take whatever lore it presents seriously. After all, every other side game so far in the franchise has been outside of the game's continuity, and accepted as such immediately. Things like Freddy in Space 2 and 3, Fury's Rage, not FNAF World, that's a mainline series game, but things like those side games that Scott made by himself. There's silly bits in it and fun references to the lore and weird mashups, but nothing we were ever supposed to take seriously. Sometimes they can be used for supporting evidence on some of the ideas in Scott's head, but no major cruxes of any theories. However, before now, like I said, those were independent games made by Scott and maybe a few other people and some artists. They were fun side projects as a gift to the community. That's all. 5 Laps at Freddy's is a full racing game made by an independent team of developers, officially being produced for Five Nights at Freddy's and promoted by Scott Cawthon. So important that it was the second to last reveal for the 10th anniversary of Five Nights at Freddy's. So we have to consider this seriously and look at the game and decide if we think it's in the continuity or not. Well, it can't have literally happened because it's like a kart racer. Like, that can't be something that occurred naturally in the timeline.
No.
But I've heard the argument that it might be an in-universe game. After all, the Steam page presents it as an in-universe game for the continuity.
In-universe game.
I would buy that, if not for the sinkhole level of the demo. And although technically Fazbear does know about the sinkhole because of the epilogues and them trying to turn it into a museum, it was closed off and forgotten soon after. So outside of some corporate execs, which might have already been a part of Glitchtrap's empire, the only 4 humans we know of in the games that, like, definitely knew about this sinkhole are Vanessa, who probably wouldn't tell anybody about it, Gregory, who would probably keep it to himself, Cassie, who so far does not make it back out of the sinkhole as far as we're aware, and the protagonist of Help Wanted 2, in my opinion Cassie's dad, who dies at the end of the game. So none of these people are going off to Fazbear to make a level for a kart racer. Again, technically, someone at Fazbear could know about this because they were going to make that a museum for the Pizzaplex, but nobody who works at the Pizzaplex knows about it. So I would wager to bet that this got hidden and pushed aside like a lot of the other parts of Fazbear's history. So if this game doesn't take place in the continuity timeline, and this game doesn't exist as an in-universe game within the timeline, can we take the lore that it presents seriously? Well, for now, I'm going to use this game much like I do the Silver Eyes novel trilogy. Does this game take place in the timeline? Most definitely not. But it's built with the same blocks from the same franchise that we already know about. So if there are any major themes or huge aspects of lore in this game, then I'm willing to take it into consideration for the main timeline. And this car is something that exactly fits into this definition. Like, if there's a map that has a poster of Montgomery Gator in, like, Fredbear's, then I'm willing to be like, it's set dressing, it's probably not in continuity, probably not serious, a fun Easter egg. But if one of the major cars, the Midnight Motorer, has this spring body antenna topper right in, like, the main point of the game, if Scott didn't want that there, it wouldn't be there. So the fact that he's willing to have this be one of the 3 cars of the demo, I think says a lot. So that's where I'm at. This game, in my opinion, is pretty solid confirmation that William Afton is the mustard man of the Later That Night minigame. Does this prove that my theory is true? It mostly proves that I'm on the right track, but there's still argumentation between is the other 2 people, Michael and the Crying Child, or Mrs. Afton and Michael. Or hell, I've seen people say it's Henry and Michael, and Henry was babysitting that night. That's why he wasn't at Freddy's when Charlotte gets killed. There's a lot of ways to interpret this, but I'm taking this game as some damn strong supporting evidence for my theory. I promise this video is not just to gloat, mostly. But people still call me crazy for saying that this dude is William Afton, and I get it, he's not perfect. But this car feels like pretty good evidence to say that
He's got a point here. I mean, that's sort of a dead giveaway. It's sort of a dead giveaway. Hear me out. What? Clearly, we're talking about because the new game's going to be a Secret of the Mimic, and like obviously the Mimic in Ruin can, if you do the special door things on the doors, the Mimic wears a costume. What's stopping it? What's stopping What's stopping it from the so-called animatronic that's outside the window is a dude in a suit? Because technically we see a glitch trap is technically a dude, is not an animatronic, it's a suit. So what I'm trying to say is maybe it could be Henry trying to protect Michael, or maybe Michael went into the suit, used the suit. Because thinking about it, I feel like it's got something to do with Secret of the Mimic, and I feel like the glitch trap suit, or the glitch trap, is just a dude in a suit. Is it just a normal costume? Maybe it's a costume. Is somebody jumping into a costume? Maybe. And again, not 100% confirm, or can't 100% confirm that, but that to me that seems more likely, because we know there's a costume for that. Literally, glitch trap is literally a costume. So what's stopping that glitch trap costume actually being something in the lore? Just putting it out there. But anyway, that is the video. Give me. I mean, leave down a comment below what you guys think. I think there's definitely something about Midnight Murderers. I mean, I do think it's confirmed that this Mustard Man is William Afton. Okay, I think that's pretty obvious. It depends who's in the suit. I don't know. Who's sitting on the chair? Who's in the bedroom? We don't know. But you know, give me your theories. Anyway, team, thank you for watching. Link to the description will be down in the description below if you want to check the video yourself. And I'll see you guys next time. Adios, have a good one. Bye bye.
Don't come to my house or else I'll suck your dick. Blood. I'll suck your blood. Ah, shit.